Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Finance and Governance Committee to order for June 14, 2022. And Madam Clerk, roll call and posting of the agenda.
Member Basua,
Here.
Member Tehran,
Here.
Chair Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on June 7th, 2022.
Thank you. Please join me to salute our flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's take a moment of silence for all the individuals that we've lost across the United States. Thank you. Okay, our next item is public comments, and Madam Clerk, I understand we have Henry Alvarado Sapien.
Mayor, Mr. Sapien has not called in. He's not available at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, we'll pick him up later if he calls in. Okay, our next item is item C1, and this is the consent item, City Clerk Department's approval of the minutes, and that the Finance and Governance Committee approve the minutes of May 24, 22 as regular meeting as presented. Move approval by Councilman Sua, second by Councilman Tehran. Okay, let's vote.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next item is this is the adoption of the investment policy. And the recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council adopt the fiscal year 2022 investment policy. And of course, this was a major pre-recorded, and we do have our treasurer, Mr. Phil Molina, for any additional information. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
We do not have any speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Molina, council members, any questions, concerns, or other items that we can ask Mr. Molina? Okay, well, quick question since you're here. You know,
Yes,
one of the things that I was looking at is that we have several people that we invest money with, and one of the companies I think is Wells Fargo Bank, and the other one is it Piper or?
Piper Jaffray, yes, sir.
Can you give us a little bit of information on that?
All of our brokers have to go through a process where we ask them to provide us audited financial reports. We ask them to identify the market in which they work. We want to make sure they understand our policy. They certify to the fact that they will comply with our policy, albeit last week, one of the brokers tried to sell me a Ontario Bank $5 million midterm note at 5%, and I was really anxious to buy it, if you know what the market is.
5% today.
Exactly.
Right.
But I reminded him that the bond or the note had to be for an operating entity within the United States and issued by the United States market, and it was not, so we couldn't buy it.
Mhm.
But they all certified to the fact that they understand and are held responsible to helping us comply with the policy. And I've had the brokers remind me from time to time that a particular issue is 2 months beyond the 5-year limit. And so they help me to remember that we can't buy those. We have to wait until the 2 months expire. So that's a process we go through. I pass the registered documents through the treasurer's staff. Eden Elamari reviews it. Martha Guerra reviews it.
Mhm.
So we make sure that the three of us are comfortable and we understand who those brokers are. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Chair.
and of course, we got to be safe. I understand we probably don't have any investments in the stock market because stock market is pretty volatile at this time.
I'm proud to say we do not have anything in Bitcoin,
Exactly right. We're in trouble there.
and it would be difficult for us to comply with our policy and to invest in that. We could invest in the market under certain conditions.
Mm.
Quite frankly, though, I'm adverse to risk for the taxpayers' money. And so I make sure that it's either a GSE issued bond or that we have AAA rating or better.
So we're not in the risky market.
No, sir. Doesn't mean we can't lose,
Exactly.
but we are doing our best. And if you remember last year at this time, we were making a great big 0.42% interest rate on 5-year notes. I mean,
And the whole
today
idea,
we're making 4. In fact, this morning I bought one at 6 o'clock this morning at 4.25%. So you
So-
can see how the market has changed. And I understand that the feds have indicated their willingness to increase the rates even higher in order to try to stop the runaway, what they call a runaway potential inflation of 8.4%.
yeah.
So it looks like I'm going to be very active over the next 2 or 3 weeks again.
So it's really important that we take care of the taxpayers' dollars and invest wisely.
Yes, sir.
Council members, any additional questions? If not, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend this, the committee take this, send it to the city council for adoption. That's my motion. Second by Councilman Basua. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Chairman and members, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Mhm. Our next item is a city manager department, and this is the City of Oxnard whistleblower summary update. And the recommendation is that the Finance and Government Committee recommended City Council receive and file an updated report on the whistleblower matter. And of course, this is not was not live, but we do have a consultant. Is that
Yeah, we have Henry Ohm from
Henry.
Price Page and Company. He is they are a whistleblower hotline entity, and he's on a line and ready to make the presentation. Henry?
Go ahead, Henry. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Good evening, Finance and Governance Committee and residents of Oxnard. Again, my name is Henry Ohm. I'm from Price Page and Company. We're an independent accounting firm that helps to monitor the whistleblower program for the city of Oxnard. And as a part of our role, we report out to the Finance and Governance Committee every 6 months regarding the status of the whistleblower program. So I do have a brief update this evening for the Finance and Governance Committee.
Thank you.
Does the Finance and Governance Committee have the slides available to be brought up on screen, or can I share my screen?
You go ahead and show them.
Please share your screen.
Okay,
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
Let me know if it's up on screen now.
But we
Yes,
can
it
see
is.
We can see it. Yeah. Mhm.
Terrific. Great. So we started monitoring the whistleblower program on behalf of the city of Oxnard back in 2017. And for those who aren't aware of the whistleblower program, this is a program established by the city to allow for city employees, members of the public, even city employees to potentially report allegations of improper government action due to fraud, waste, or abuse. And so we monitor that program in accordance with the policy that has been established by the city. And as part of that process, we receive complaints that remain confidential, and we do not share the identity of the complainant with any members of the city unless we are required by law enforcement or by court action. So this provides confidence to those who submit these complaints and allegations that their identity will remain anonymous to the city. There's a number of different methods that you can submit a complaint through the whistleblower program. The one that we have available is the fraud hotline. And you can call the fraud hotline that's available on the city's website. There's information related to the phone number and the methods of complaint submission. And that is available in both English and Spanish. And we receive a summary and transcript of that information that is submitted. The other methods include email directly to us, and that information again is posted on the city's website as well as mail. But the most common method of submission is through the website on the city of Oxnard. When you click on the website, the link on the website of the city of Oxnard, it actually redirects the complainant to our server. So the submission comes directly to us. It does not go to the IT department or any department within the city of Oxnard. It actually resides on our server. And actually, that is the most common method of submission for this whistleblower program. Okay.
Okay.
Our firm really only focuses on fiscal related matters. There's plenty of times actually that we do get complaints that are non-fiscal related. It may be personnel, it may be a code violation, things of that sort. I want to remind everyone that our firm really focuses only on the fiscal related matters. Anything that we receive that are non-fiscal related, we do evaluate and forward to the appropriate department. Now, I do want to assure the complainants that may be submitting that we do not share your identity. We do not share the nature of items that would not be appropriate to share within the department. So for example, if there's a complaint about a specific department, we wouldn't necessarily forward that complaint over to that department for them to see. So just wanted to reiterate that. And then after receiving a complaint, our firm will evaluate that complaint to determine if there's merit. So if there is a complaint related to fiscal related matters, we evaluate it to determine whether there's any necessary action related to that. In addition, we are not, the program is not designed to be, independent investigation, which means we don't report back to any one member or any complainant regarding the status of those matters until it's fully completed. In order for us to conduct an investigation, we have to establish what is called predication. That's the term that we use in the fraud world, I guess. Predication is defined by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners as the totality of circumstances that would lead a reasonable, professionally trained, and prudent individual to believe a fraud has occurred, is occurring, and or will occur. We basically have to use professional judgment in determining whether there's a complaint that's received has any merit. And we would screen that complaint to determine whether we should launch a full investigation. Okay, so in order to launch a full investigation and sharing with everyone the thought process that we go through in terms of evaluating it, there's two broad categories. There's a quantitative assessment and then a qualitative assessment. I'll share a little bit about that later. The quantitative assessment is basically the value of potential loss. And we categorize this between high, medium, and low priority. Anything that's high is above $75,000 of potential loss. Medium is $25,000 to $75,000, and low is less than $25,000. So that's the quantitative side. But what we also consider is the qualitative aspect as well. So high priority would involve high level of management, collusion of multiple wrongdoers. Medium priority would be potential abuse of authority, medium to low employee involvement, and low priority would be isolated instances of time abuse, wasteful practices, and things of that nature. So when we get a complaint, and if it is fiscal related, we have to go through this professional assessment to determine from a quantitative and qualitative perspective whether it would be whether utilizing the city resources to conduct an investigation is prudent or not.
Okay.
I'm happy to share that from the time we've last reported to the Finance and Governance Committee from November 30th, 2021 through today, we've only received 8 complaints, and they were all received through the city's website. So again, remember, the complaint goes on the city's website. Once you click on the link, it redirects it to our firm's website and our server. But none of these items are fiscal related and requires us to conduct any screening or predication review. So you can see that the website is pretty much the most common method of submission. Okay.
Okay.
Here's a quick summary of the 8 that have been received. 2 of them were related to code violations, 2 related to ordinance violation, and 4 items were all unrelated to the city. Doesn't involve the city at all. Again, we receive a number of different complaints from time to time. We evaluate it to determine whether we need to forward it to the city or not, even if it's not fiscal related. Okay. And again, none of the complaints received during that period had predication.
Okay.
Here's a quick summary of what we received since the inception of this whistleblower program back in fiscal year 2018. So, we summarize it by the primary type of allegation on the far left side and the number of submissions received through all methods for the period. Okay. So this is one of two slides. Here's this total summary down below. In fiscal year 18, we had a total of 25 complaints. Fiscal year 19, 14 complaints. 2020, 29 complaints. 2021, 35 complaints. And thus far in fiscal year 2022, we have 22 complaints for a total submission received of 125 since the inception of the program.
It's good.
The top three categories of complaints received in all the periods. The number one was COVID-19 safety concerns. During that 2020 and 2021 period, we received a lot of concerns from the residents of the city of Oxnard regarding potential exposure and things of that sort. And we did forward those complaints to the appropriate departments. The second most popular one was matters that were unrelated to the city. And then the third one was code violations. Okay. So to date, we have substantiated and investigated a total of 2 out of 125 complaints and allegations that's been received as a part of this whistleblower program. So all in all, a number of their submissions received were non-fiscal related. When they were, we evaluated for predication. And in essence, we investigated 2 out of the 125 received. Okay. I know that was a very quick summary, but all positive since there were no items of consequence to report to the Finance and Governance Committee. Is there any questions I can help answer them at this time?
Yeah, Henry, before we go to the question I have is, I think it's really good news. So we only have 8 complaints, but I'm not sure, maybe other people might be afraid to call in, but that's good. The question I have on the fiscal complaint for 75,000 is a whistleblower calls in and with the allegation that there's a fraud or whatever, 75,000. Is that the starting point of that particular complaint, or how do we investigate that? Or do they have to have some kind of proof, that that's happening?
I can share with you, Mayor, that a lot of times when we do get a complaint, there's not sufficient information for us to do anything with. And if, for example, a generic one would be, my coworker is stealing. And so, and normally we do not get the name of the complainant. It's reported anonymously. In instances like that, there's nothing we can do with that information. But when they do provide some level of information, for example, like, let me give one would be, I think we're purchasing from this vendor. And that might be inappropriate, right? In those instances, we would screen it to determine, okay, what is the volume of transaction that we do with this vendor, and to be able to evaluate quantitatively where it falls on this scale. Is it low, medium, or high priority? And then we also take a look at the next slide, the qualitative aspect of it. Even if it's a low priority, even if it's a low dollar value, if it involves high level members of management, that's of concern. And it would certainly rise to the level of potentially investigating in those instances. So.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. And I just wanted to find out, because it's $75,000 and how do you prove it and so forth. And good. Thank you so much. Council members, any questions? Councilman Teran?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Ohm, for the presentation. Mayor actually asked, one of the questions I had was if you could give an example of what a substantiated complaint that moves on to investigation might look like. And it sounds like you might have given us an example of that, issues with potential vendors, or suspicion of somebody stealing from the city or materials, something along those lines. Does that sound about right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. A couple other questions I have. So the last slide mentioned that to date we have 2 of 125 complaints since the inception of the program that were substantiated and investigated. To what degree you're able to, without disclosing specific information on it, were those fiscal related, those 2 complaints that were founded and investigated?
Yes, Councilmember Teran. So I can share this because it's been reported out to the prior fiscal policy task force. So this is not a secret anymore. We again share the conclusion of the reports after we're all done. So they both were fiscal related matters. One was related to parking receipts, internal control, and how cash was being managed at the parking receipts. We fully investigated that matter, made a number of recommendations to the city. And for the most part, we understand that a majority of them have been implemented as a part of our recommendation process. And the second one was related to cash handling as well, related to a department within the city of Oxnard. And so there were concerns regarding the controls that were in place in handling the cash at that department as well. So again, those two reports have been fully investigated and submitted to the city. And I'm not sharing anything that is confidential since it has been shared in public session.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like in those particular two cases that policies and protocol really needed to be reviewed, and it sounds like that was implemented. So great, thank you.
Yes, that is correct. As part of that process, we do follow up to ensure the recommendations have been considered. And for the most part, it's our understanding that they have been implemented.
Thank you. My last question, and I'm pretty sure I ask this with each of these presentations, but would you be able to give us an example of what might fall under the category of unrelated to the city?
Yes. So we get a lot of those. I wish I had my log, but ones that I do remember might be noise complaints. You know, there might be, this car is parked across the street for 7 days already. I need it towed. Things like that really don't involve city personnel, city action, city policy, but it is a complaint that gets submitted. So we do forward that to the city as appropriate. So those are the majority of the complaints that we do get, other than the COVID one.
Okay, thank you. And that seems like that was number 3 out of the top 3, or I'm sorry, number 2 of the top 3. So, all right, thank you for that. And just a quick comment on that, Mayor. I'm wondering, as we're hearing this, if there's potential on the whistleblower portion of the website, if it's stated already that these are fiscal related matters, but we'll certainly take those complaints, which I'm glad people are submitting them.
Absolutely.
But perhaps there's a simple statement or a link that says, for code complaints or things, we have a link to maybe the 311 portion
The
of the
311
website or
can take it.
something along those lines to help folks visually differentiate where their complaint should go if they want to do so.
That's a good point, because that way, or really whistleblower complaints for some activity that's not fraud or whatever. Maybe it's more of a service type concern, potentially. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Great thought.
Okay, Councilman Basua?
Good, thank you.
The last question that I have, Henry, is how do we compare to comparable cities or agencies, with our whistleblower activity report? Is it up, down, or are we normal, or?
This is actually in line with what we would expect. So for the most part, the number of investigations that we do conduct under these types of programs have been in line. I would say normally 5% of all complaints have enough information in order for us to commence an investigation once we go through the predication process. So, you're actually right in line with that, and actually below that in terms of actual actions. In terms of submissions, you are on the higher end from what we've seen, but I wouldn't be surprised because of the size of the city. But you can see, because the nature of the complaints that have been submitted aren't fiscal related, they normally wouldn't count against you, I would say, regarding it being a complaint. If you have that 311 redirect to a service call or service complaint, that might be different. It'll certainly minimize the number of complaints that we receive.
So I think what I'm hearing is probably that our people are concerned and they want to see that we do the right thing, which I think is important.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the report, council members. What's a pleasure?
I'll move the recommended action.
Okay. Okay, recommended by Tehran, second by Basua. Please vote.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you. Okay, our third item is the information. Sorry, can you hear me? Is the Information Technology Department is to subjects ratify the Microsoft Corporation Enterprise Agreement number 808445 for information technology and software. And the recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council ratify the city's Microsoft Corporation Volume Licensing Enterprise Agreement number 80844. and authorize the mayor to execute the purchase order number 8617 with Software One Incorporated for it not to exceed an amount of $365,862.08 for the continued use of the purchase of Microsoft products from June 2020 to June 2023 agreement terms. And again, this is pre-recorded item presentation. We do have Helen Miller for any additional information. Council members? Go ahead, Councilman Turan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller, for the presentation and the information in the staff report. I'm wondering, just for the benefit of the public, if you would mind just briefly explaining a little bit about what the enterprise agreement is and what it encompasses, and then what such an agreement, how such an agreement can benefit the city and our operations.
Certainly. Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
The Microsoft Enterprise Agreement is a volume licensing agreement that encompasses several Microsoft products that are in use in the city, primarily at this point in the police department. I believe a little over 400 of their workstations have Microsoft operating systems on them, desktop productivity software, which are things like Word and Excel and PowerPoint. And then they have servers and databases that run their police systems, like their computer-aided dispatch, their records management system, an IT support system that we use to go in and help them when they have issues, and their content management system. Those are just a few examples. And the benefits of the enterprise agreement are many for the city. First of all, it's an agreement that we piggyback onto the County of Riverside's agreement. And that Riverside agreement is negotiated. They're a much bigger public entity than us. And as a public entity, we take advantage of that, and we get pricing as if we had 15,000 devices and users out there versus, somewhere between the neighborhood of 1,200 to 1,800, depending on what product we're talking about that Microsoft sells us. The benefits of an EA are we lock in pricing for 3 years. That's the minimum term. So no price increases for 3 years. We also get a pre-vetted authorized reseller that comes with the agreement that we select. And the reseller we use is someone called Software One. We get an administrative portal where we can administer all of that licensing in one place. We also get rights to the latest version of the software, and that's very important. So that's an easy way to keep the software up to date, meaning we've purchased those rights for the term of that 3-year agreement. So if there's, a new version of Windows or a new version of Office, we own that as well, the rights to use that.
Within the 3 years?
Within the 3 years, yes. So I think I answered your question. Did I miss any pieces of that?
No, that's what I was looking for. Just kind of a brief
Great.
overview of it and what the benefits are to such an agreement to the city of Oxnard and its operations. So thank you.
Yes.
Yep. And I think also the compatibility, I think, is really important. It's one of the things that we're looking at, right?
Yes. Approximately 80% of businesses use Microsoft to
That's
run
right.
their
Uh-huh.
organizations, right? It's kind of a core base function technology. And so standardizing on Microsoft is to the city's benefit. It's easier to administer. You get a better experience of everybody doing their work. So definitely.
And one of the things you mentioned, and I would just kind of reiterate that for the public, is that we're piggybacking with the County of Riverside for the minimum of 3 years, and that's going to save us a lot of money too, like we have with other items that we buy for the city of Oxnard.
Yes, we could not get that same pricing because we're too small of an organization.
So that's a big benefit, and of course with modifications of the EA as needed and so forth. So, Councilman Turan.
Thank you. One last item is, I know that this particular item, we had another component to it where we're looking at the agreement and, when it was brought into play and implemented. And I think it's another great example, and I know it's come up multiple times in the past on multiple different items about our current ERP that we have in place or that we should be having in place and the controls and monitoring abilities we'll have with that. So I appreciate you putting that out there, that we'll be monitoring it closely moving forward as we go into the last year of the agreement, but also reminding us that when the new Tyler Munis ERP comes into play, it'll be a little bit more automated versus kind of a manual overview or manual monitoring of, contract work like this. So thank you for that.
Yes, and I would, one thing I would like to add is IT actually did follow and is in compliance with the procurement or purchasing ordinance, which the purchasing ordinance creates an annual limit of $100,000 a year for the purchasing agent to execute. And if you look at this contract, it was under $100,000 a year for the first 2 years, although it did hit exceeding 200, and that would be under the city manager's annual threshold. So that's why we brought it for ratification, because the city manager has had a directive that rather than looking at the annual limit, that it's more restrictive and using an aggregate limit for the contract. And so that has been the practice. And so that's why we're bringing it for ratification.
And I think for transparency, that's a good point.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Councilman Basua? Any? Duran? Need a motion? Also motion to approve?
I'll second.
Second. Roll call. Please vote.
Mayor, may I please confirm that you made the motion?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank
Motion by
you.
Zergos and second by Duran.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, and Madam Clerk, any speakers in this item?
We do not have any speakers. Thank you, Mayor.
And let me go back again to, did Henry Sapien ever call up to, I just want to make sure that the public has an opportunity to speak under public comments.
He did not call in during this meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much for that. And item E, council members, any items for the future agendas?
Mayor, I don't believe you voted on the last item.
We did vote. I didn't vote.
Yes, the vote is 3-0. Thank you.
I thought I did.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So, any items for future items? No? We are adjourned. Thank you. And we'll be back at 6:30. Thank you.